The Mag'har are the faction of uncorrupted orcs living in Outland. The reason for this is due to the Red Pox, a virulent plague which affected the orcs of Draenor. It was originally created by the ogres of the Gorian Empire about 430 years ago, based on legends of the Curse of Sethe, as a weapon to use against the orcs. And, although the ogres were defeated, the disease remained, returning every few generations. During the rise of the Horde, Gul'dan engineered an artificial outbreak of the disease, which he blamed on the draenei, resulting in the worst outbreak in Orc history. Ner'zhul urged the infected orcs to quarantine themselves within a settlement in Nagrand under the leadership of Garad, the chieftain of the Frostwolf clan, who was also infected. After Garad's death, his mate, Greatmother Geyah, though uninfected herself, took leadership of these orcs and named the settlement Garadar. As they lived in quarantine, they avoided all of the wars and disasters which befell the orcs during this time, only receiving news from the outside world occasionally, and thus are the only orcs left uncorrupted by fell magic. During the events of Beyond the Dark Portal, the chieftain of the Shattered Hand clan, Kargath Bladefist, accidentally stumbled upon Garadar. Kargath was fleeing from Hellfire Citadel along with a small number of his subordinates after the Alliance successfully assaulted it. He tried conscripting the still disease-ridden orcs he found in Garadar to rally to Ner'zhul at the Black Temple, but Greatmother Geyah intervened and refused to allow him. Kargath was finally dissuaded when he found Garrosh Hellscream, as he was disgusted with what he perceived as a young orc's weakness. The Shattered Hand chieftain then left, but also refused to rally behind Ner'zhul anymore, vowing to rebuild his own clan and take the fight to the Alliance when they would be ready. The Mag'har eventually recovered from the Red Pox and also began expanding beyond Garadar, establishing outposts such as Sunspring in Nagrand or the Mag'har post in Hellfire. As there were orcs belonging to all of the clans, they typically did not separate themselves based on their old clan loyalties, with the notable exception of the Bleeding Hollow. The Bleeding Hollow Mag'har apparently lived in a separate village from the others, and only rejoined the rest at Garadar after the ogres attacked and overran their settlement. Jorin Deadeye, the chieftain of the Bleeding Hollow, also seems to hold authority over his own clan mostly, and while he did serve as a military advisor to Garrosh Hellscream, he does not seem to hold much authority within the Mag'har as a whole. The first Mag'har to set foot on Azeroth and see Orgrimmar was, perhaps unsurprisingly, Garrosh Hellscream, who was, at first, awed by how imposing the city seemed, but dismayed at the apparent poverty he found its inhabitants lived in. Other Mag'har would, of course, follow Garrosh, and many would serve as high-ranking officers in his armies, both in Northrend and during his tenure as war chief, very likely being orcs who had previously fought alongside him in Outland. As a result, however, many of the Mag'har stood alongside Garrosh during the Darkspear Rebellion, and many fell during the siege of Orgrimmar. Interestingly enough, the ideal candidate Thrall considered to succeed him as war chief was the Mag'har Dranosh Saurfang, or Saurfang the Younger. While he was a mighty, honorable warrior and a decorated war hero like Garrosh, Dranosh was also considered less hot-headed and much wiser than Hellscream, as shown perhaps by him being on good terms with the Alliance commander at the Wrathgate, Bolvar Foredragon. During the events before the Cataclysm, Thrall considered he only had about 4 choices for his successor, of which Dranosh was the best one, except for the unfortunate fact that he was dead at the time.